Conversations with Chinenye. Let's talk about development and the aspect of development and nation building that has to do with wealth creation. I personally believe that if we want to move away from this sort of handout situation where we're always going to countries cap in hand, begging for money, if we really want to solve the issue of poverty, we need to think about wealth creation. And when I talk about that, I don't think it's just about the federal government, right? Because the federal government has its role to play for sure when it comes to wealth creation, right? But it seems as though our states, every month, like they say, they wait for their FAC, allocation, all that. Very few states have very good IGR. And then when you tell them about internally generated revenues, they just think about, oh, how do we tax people? And then sometimes they even tax the poor to death, like they say. Yeah. So it's not about how do we stimulate certain sectors. Although, yeah, some states are getting it right. I mean, I know in Edo State, some states I hear about, they do certain things. Even Lagos State being obviously the commercial capital. We've heard about the Lekki Free Trade Zone. Yeah. Obviously, Dangote Refinery is there, blah, blah, blah. Abia State, they're trying to really do a lot, paying pensions. They're trying to, develop the power sector with the private sector as well. That just happened recently with the geometric power, and just create these clusters. One or two other states, we hear about, but generally speaking, a lot of states in Nigeria are not very viable. Yeah. A lot of states, if they don't get their allocation and all that, it's like nothing is happening. They can't pay salaries, all those kind of stories. And a lot of them complain about loans maybe from previous administrations, so maybe all the money is going to loan payments. How do you think we can have good governance at the subnational level? We can have more accountability and more transparency at the state level?
There are two ways to look at this question. The first way to look at it is how our constitutional situation as a country either empowers or disempowers the states to develop.
Okay.
We're a federal republic.
Yeah.
And this is an overstated factor. To be honest, it bores me to say it again, but we are a federal republic that is not federal.
Yeah.
So we are a federal republic where the states that are supposed to take absolute responsibility for the generation of resources, for the management of resources, for the redistribution of resources to citizens have been almost excluded from that power because of our constitution. And the constitution then says a lot of these resources should go to the federal, then the federal should redistribute it to the states. So it's almost like you're creating an infant out of your states. Because like a father who has kids, and instead of apportioning resources to the kids to manage and take care of themselves, he takes in all the resources and he gives them stipends at the end of every month. So firstly, as much as this conversation has been said over and over, and in my lifetime in Nigeria, we've called it resource control, we've called it restructuring, we've called it decentralization, whatever name you call it.
Yeah.
We need a constitutional system that says, look, your state, your federal, generate your resources, manage them, distribute them in ways that are accountable to your citizens.
Absolutely.
Because the problem that creates is that even the citizens do not have the needed legitimacy to hold their state governments to account. Because state governments can easily remove that legitimacy and send it back federal. Which is why I'm quite excited that the current constitutional amendment process in Nigeria is looking into most of these issues.
Yeah.
They're starting with state police, but they're going to look at other issues. So that's the first problem. The second level is, to be honest, Chinenye, democracy and governance at the state level in Nigeria is at absolute fragile levels. And we don't talk about it much because we are all concentrated about what's happening at the federal government level. But as bad as things may seem at the federal level, we are in utopia when you compare it to the state level. I have worked in projects in states where civil society can't even call press conferences.
Wow.
Because if they do, the governor of that state will have very serious ramifications for them. We are in states where stakeholders who are necessary to build accountability at the state level. So for you to get things to work in a democratic setting, you need coalitions to build around civil society, trade unions, government officials. Everybody needs to come together to create solutions. There are states in Nigeria where civil society can't even approach a government official. Or the government official will tell you, look, I like this thing you're doing, but I can't. You need to go and talk to my boss first. So levels of democracy levels of governance at state level are absolutely at zero. And we need to focus our attentions there if we need to have a nation where every sub-region or sub-unit is contributing to our development.
Conversations with Chinenye. I like the point you make, and even when you talk about separation of powers, even at the state level, the judiciary, the legislative arm of government, they're not strong institutions. Most of them are at the beck and call of the governor. The governor appoints everyone, gives out the tickets. Some of the, even when you now talk about the councillors, the local government chambers, most times they don't even hold elections. You know, everything is like one governor in charge of everything, like an emperor.
Yeah.
And now you have this issue of even when a governor even leaves office, the next person is appointed by him. It's like a selection process. And then he now starts wielding that influence, undue influence on the next person. So that next person doesn't even have autonomy. Yeah. What do you think is the solution to this problem? Because, you know, we're trying to focus on solutions. Like you say, is it civil society? Is it the citizens? Is it, you know, how do we get more accountability? You know, I mean, there's so many rumors we hear about things. You know, the fact that it's not even a rumor. You see a lot of state governors in Abuja, the federal capital. Some of them are running their states from Abuja. The monies for the states, sometimes they say it doesn't even leave Abuja, it's converted into dollars and things like that. So how do you ensure that people at the bottom, because a lot of things, if they work at the state level, people don't have any reason even calling their president or calling anybody. Yeah. Is it better elections, or what do you think is the solution?
I mean, if I had a very straightforward solution, we wouldn't be having most of these problems. But a couple of thoughts for me, and I'll just keep it to two simple thoughts. The first one for me is about how we change the incentives at the state level. And recently we had a constitutional amendment under the previous administration. It went under the radar, but it was a constitutional amendment that ensured that state houses of assembly had financial autonomy.
Exactly.
It went under the radar.
It wasn't implemented.
Well, now a number of the states need to then pass laws to implement it.
Yes.
A few states have started passing those laws. It hasn't gone all around. And it's difficult to get it to go quickly because the state governors still control those states of assembly. But in some states it's happening. In development, you also need to have a very patient approach. And I think those incentives are slowly changing, right? And we need to continue to change those incentives where the interest of the legislators is put against the interest of the executive, and each of them will act in their own best interest. And then we're going to see that needed accountability in terms of checks and balances. And I think we need to all try as much as we can within our little spaces to support the judiciary being really independent, the legislature being really, because if you don't give them that independence, they will not be able to stand up to a governor. Because as a legislator, and I have a few friends who are legislators, they are thinking between, should I call a governor out and in 4 years' time, I'm just back to wherever I'm from, I'm not in House of Assembly anymore, or do I just close my mouth and take the governor's money and continue to be a House of Assembly member? They have to make those compromises. So we need to create systems that change those incentives. That is number one. Number two, and as much as we do it in a certain way, and we say it as much as we can, we need to support society organizations at the state level.
Very important.
And I think we all work in this space. And recently I'm seeing a very exciting trend where we see, you know, the USAID, the Development Agency, the UK aid, we're seeing the EU start having really stretched out civil society support programs at the state level. We need to be able to empower voices. At the federal level, we have very strong society voices. Who go on TV every day, who call out the government, who engage stakeholders. We need to replicate that at state level. It requires a lot of resources, it requires time, but we need to be able to do that. And of course, another point that may seem a bit mute is that we need to try as much as we can to name and shame. So on this issue, the governor of Abia State took this very weird decision, which was absolutely amazing, where he has stopped pensions for former governors in his state. And I saw the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, applauding him for what he's doing. We need to applaud them and use them as an example to shame others as much as possible.
I saw people on Twitter sending messages. Their mothers, their grandmothers have received pensions since 9 years. People received pensions and they were rejoicing. This is something that they're entitled to. And I said, what kind of country do we live in that somebody, an old person for 9 years, how do you expect the person to live?
Do I tell you why that is happening? I worked in the civil service for 8 to 9 years before I moved to my current role. The civil service is not built to have pension contributions done in a proper manner while the civil servants are serving.
Okay.
So I ended up taking a leave of absence from my role after 8 years serving my state government. I had 0 pensions to my name. Wow. So what then happens is, when I work that way for 35 years and I retire, it is that year that I retired that the government now has to go and look for money from its allocation to pay me my pension and my gratuity. So we don't have a properly managed pension system at the state levels for these people. So they go through all their work in the civil service, retire, have 0 monies in their pension funds, and then they start almost begging the government to pay them pension when they should have been managed better.
In other states, people use those monies, even invest it. There's a way they can invest
that's the whole point.
Into shares, into bonds and things like that, and you can actually make money from it. So these are some of the structural issues we talk about. I want to touch on the idea because I mentioned wealth creation, and this also ties into productivity of states, right? People are complaining about Naira devaluation. People are complaining about FX shortages and all that. So how do we get to a point where our states, and you talked about the fact that the Constitution needs to be amended in certain ways. I also believe the Land Use Act needs to be amended because the Land Use Act is giving the ownership of everything, mineral resources, land, all these things, to the federal government. So now, as it relates to oil and gas, because you're from the Niger Delta, even Imo State is also an oil producing state. We've had since the 70s, an oil boom that happened. And a lot of the countries, at the point where the 6th largest oil producer in the world, a lot of countries who had that kind of resource were able to use it to develop. If you go to Saudi, if you go to some of these Norway, countries that have oil, these countries are beautiful. They have amenities, they have infrastructure, they have everything. If you go to the Niger Delta, in fact, I think Bayelsa State, where you're from, one of the places there was actually one of the poorest.
Yeah.
Is it this
multi-dimensional poverty index, second poorest?
Second poorest. This is a state like Bayelsa that brings out that has brought out so much resource for this country, for this nation. It makes me weep, and that's why I sometimes ask myself: Are we redeemable? Are we redeemable? How do you waste decades of wealth and you don't use it to invest in the future? You don't use it there. Apart from Abuja and Lagos, when you talk about infrastructure, a lot of states are struggling. So what do you think is the solution? Because now we're transitioning, there's energy transition, but I want you to talk about even just the injustice that was done to your region. That's one. But then now bringing it to the future, what can we learn from the past? And how can we now forge ahead? Because we still have some other resources. Gas, they're looking at gas as a transition fuel. And then also we have other mineral resources in other states and stuff. How do we use this to industrialize, to develop, and to create jobs for youth and just the citizens as a whole?
Look, I'm not a petroleum law expert, although I did some of it in uni, but I'd say this: the approach of the Nigerian state to how it manages its resources is very confused. So if you look at all these countries you've mentioned, you look at countries like Saudi, it's either countries that have massive resources, take a very state-led approach. So the state owns everything, right? And then gets all the resources in and then manages it and redistributes it. Or they privatize it. So the private sector runs everything efficiently and then pays taxes back to the state. Nigeria is somewhere in the middle. The problem is that we are not doing either one very well. So the stakes that the states have in our oil industry is totally engulfed in corruption. The stake that is managed by the private sector is also engulfed in corruption. So much so that, I was speaking to somebody recently who said, no matter what the statistics say, as we are in Nigeria, we don't know how much oil we produce. Because production figures are either because of corruption, misstated, understated for taxation purposes. We have a lot of illicit financial flow processes going through this oil industry.
Oil theft as well.
And oil theft as well. So there are massive problems, but we're trying to get solutions. Now, going forward, being somebody from the Niger Delta, I don't want to sound dogmatic, right? But I sincerely believe that there is an inherent approach in the state to impoverish and exclude people of their resources. And today it is the Niger Delta and we've been in the news forever. And so people think it's a one regional problem. We're beginning to find gold. We're beginning to find a lot of other resources in other parts of Nigeria. And when that gets to highly commercial quantities, other parts of this country who probably didn't understand the problem of how the state controls resources in Niger Delta will start feeling the pain. We need to have a system that recognizes the ownership of those resources. I'll give you 2 quick examples on how you can solve this problem. The first one is the reform of the Petroleum Act that ended up being the PIB. The PIA, the PIB that's now the PIA. When that law was being passed, the people of the Niger Delta just said, look, can you just give 10% of the oil revenues to the communities where this oil is found? The Nigerian state, the legislators, they acted as if that's the end of the world. 10% is in the Bible. Even God said, give me 10%. These are the owners of these resources. They argued back and forth until, guess where they ended? 3%. So you're saying these resources are on my land, but all I'm entitled to is 3%, and that 97% should go to places that I have no connection towards. There is no way you can build a nation with that in-depth feeling of injustice. You cannot rationalize it. I'll give you my community. If you get to Yenegoa, you go by boat 2 to 3 hours before you get to my community. The last time I was in my community, I couldn't touch the water.
Wow. Because
the oil is so vivid. But these people are saying just give 3%, and you haven't. Second example I will give. Shell is now divesting from the Niger Delta. All their onshore resources, they are selling it on and going offshore. In the process of the sale of these resources, Niger Delta people say, look, you've been on our land, you've operated for 60 to 70 years, now you want to leave. Can you allow us a right of first refusal to buy these assets at fair market value so that we can manage it for the benefit of our people? Shell has gone to London and sold their assets to a company registered on the stock exchange in London, allegedly owned by Nigerians. The owners of those companies have no connection to the Niger Delta people. So when we talk about a society built on fairness and justice, if the foundation of that society is such a way that people do not feel that they are being treated fairly, the average Ijaw man can never identify more as Nigerian than an Ijaw person. And I think in terms of solutions, we as a people, and this is a very basic example we use in advocacy, but whether it's happening to us or it's happening to somebody in the East or the West, we have to collectively seek means of justice and fairness. Because even if you say those resources should be managed by the state governments themselves are very corrupt. You have to ensure the resources are managed for the benefit of the people at that local level. We have a government that is too top heavy, a management structure that is too top heavy, and therefore it is really difficult for you to salvage people from poverty. And the last point I should make is that we were talking about it before we went on air. Our electoral system is not so good that people can even say, okay, because the government is bad, let us use the electoral system to vote them out and get people in that will actually do what is in our best interest. The system is such a way that the average poor Nigerian is in a lose-lose situation. And we need voices that will speak for those people. Absolutely. And there is no substitute for those voices.
Conversations with Chinenye. So I love this point you make, the way we've landed on, because that's the next final question I wanted to ask you. Yeah. It's about leadership. Servant leaders, accountable leaders, leaders that have a strong value system, leaders that care about the people and put them first. We've had a situation where those leaders, the percentage we've had are not that many, right? Political interests, personal interests, self-aggrandizement is the order of the day. People want to survive. Politicians want to go from one position to another. They do anything it takes. So other nation builders out there, because our audience as Africa Policy Conversations and all that, we have people who care. Yeah. But some of them are crippled. They feel crippled. They feel disempowered. They feel like they cannot do anything. The reason why we're having these conversations and we're taping it is because we don't want to just talk in silos. We want to ignite. We want to illuminate. Someone can be watching this from the UK, or from the US, and they're thinking, what can I do? Maybe I should move back to Nigeria and run for office. Someone might be in a village somewhere streaming this. This country is all we have. There's nothing we can do about it. We can japa, yes, but 200 and something million people all cannot japa. And even when you japa, there's something you can also do to contribute to it. So at this point, at this moment that we are in history, what would you say to leaders out there, or people who are contemplating getting involved, making a difference? What word of advice do you have to them? And what word of advice do you have to some of the people who are in there? Because they are not, some of them are not irredeemable. Some of them might have gone in there. Some of the people, maybe they're in the National Assembly, they might be, ministers, I don't know. They might be in the cabinet something, and they want to make a difference. They want to leave a legacy. But maybe they are finding it so difficult because the structures around them, the people around them, it's so much on them, right? So what advice do you have to those people, and even just the citizens?
When all is said and done, when we've talked about all the problems we have as a country, when you want to form a big picture strategic image of where we are as a country, is a matter of perspective. I am not a huge fan of defeatist views of this country. We've all had moments that have been difficult. Recently we had the NSAS movement that we're part of. We had the 2023 elections where it seemed like things were going really good and then they dropped. But you always have to have that big perspective of where we are as a country. A lot of the countries that we want to be like have challenges that are even more deep-seated than we.
That's true.
And so the first thing I want to say is, if by any means you feel like Nigeria is irredeemable, you need to change that picture.
Yeah.
We have seen progress happen in Nigeria. The 2023 elections were quite discouraging in a number of ways, but we work in the election space. They are one of the most prospective elections Nigeria has conducted. We got 8 parties into the National Assembly. It's never happened before. We have indications that show that on this democratic journey, we are making progress.
Amazing.
So the first thing you should understand is that in that space you are feeling like things cannot work and that you are the only person thinking that way. I work with people across government, civil society, private sector. There are so many people like you in those spaces. We just need one event to ignite that potential.
Absolutely.
And I think that event will come. So firstly, have a very big picture. Don't be frustrated by the immediate things. Once in a while, we get accountability. This is a country that no matter how bad things, we're an anti-corruption regime. In the last 4 to 5 years, we've had like 3 governors convicted of corruption. Maybe they're not getting punished as much as they should, but we are having some reason, some indications of potential progress. The second point I want to make, and I always say this, and I don't want to say this in a way that I'm trying to motivate people to be activists or rebels, but you have to take national development personally. When I speak to people and people say this on our country or they dissociate themselves from the country, I feel very discouraged. Whether the British put us together or life put us together or God put us together, however you look at it, I am a Nigerian. My mom and my dad they had the blood of Nigeria running through them and they passed it on to me. And we have to understand that for us to make this country work, we have to take it personal. I do not think anybody in Aso Rock has a better right to decide the fate of this country than I do.
Absolutely.
I don't care if you're in government house. I don't care where you are. But I think when it comes to making this country what it should be, we need to make it a personal business. And as much as I would encourage anyone who has anything in consideration of running for public office to do it, we don't necessarily need to be in public office to be leaders.
That's absolutely the case.
I mean, talking about you, looking at it for example, you're not in public office, but I know the spheres of influence you operate in the civil society, in your private practice, in legal practice, in policy conversations. You're probably impacting more lives than if you were a House of Assembly member, or even a member of the House of Reps. In the little spaces we have to take on that challenge of leadership. Because at the end of the day, when all the English is done, when all the problems have been analyzed, our generation will not be defined by how smart we define the problems of this country, but by the solutions that we did provide for them. And whether you like it or not, there are people in this generation who are actually making these things work. I was having a conversation with the chairman of the Conference of Speakers of Nigeria.
It's a young person.
A young guy from Oyo State. Right? Whether you like it or not, there is no age barrier, whether you're too young or too old, there is no difference. I really think that as, not just as young people, but as Nigerians, we need to take the project of this country personal. And we have to make sure that as we read about American history and they tell you about George Washington and they tell you about these people, these countries were built by patriots who took a challenge at a time where it probably wasn't the easiest thing to do. And I think that we've talked about problems here today, we've talked about solutions, but as a people, we need to take that responsibility of leadership in knowing that we all have a stake in this country. And I think when I grow old and I die, I want to be able to say, actually, in my time, I did all I could to move this country forward. The country will not move forward like a bus that you're driving. It's not easy. It's 200 and something million people, 200 and something ethnic groups and languages. It's complex, it's difficult. But in the little spaces we have to always do what we can to move it forward, because at the end of the day, I don't want to use the usual language, Nigeria is all we have, but at the end of the day, you were put here in Nigeria, you were born here in Nigeria for a purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. This has been an amazing interview. I love the passion, I love the energy, and just the honesty. And speaking to people like you give me hope. And that's why they say iron sharpens iron. We all need one another. And for the nation builders out there, the thought leaders, the activists, the professionals, the doctors, wherever you are, whatever sphere of influence you're in, just know that you have a role to play. We can't keep abdicating responsibility to people. If each of us does our own part, Nigeria is going to change. No one man or woman can solve the problem overnight, but with the collective efforts of all of us, lending our voices. And the thing about this is it's like a spark. You know, when you light up somebody else, person lights up somebody else, and before you know it, the darkness has been overtaken by light. And so that's what all of us must do. I must thank you so much for this conversation. I'm truly, truly inspired. I'm motivated. And I know people out there who are watching are also motivated as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And this has been fun. And just one last thing to say before I go. And this is the conversation we're having before we came on here. When I look through the history of countries always have an inflection point, an event that turns the trajectory of that country. The impact of that trajectory is determined by how prepared the various sectors of that society was for that moment. Let us continue to do the work we are doing. We will find our inflection point. And when we do find it, it will seriously accelerate all the little efforts we've been doing to get in this country where we need it to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Honestly speaking, I would vote for you. I don't know if you've ever I don't know if you've ever considered it. I'm in this move trying to get as much people as possible to get involved in the process. Yes, you don't always have to do it by joining political party or by running for office, but it's one of the ways. And you know, the private sector in Nigeria has done well. The creative industry has done well. So many sectors are doing well, banking, telecoms. But for some reason, the politics in Nigeria is still a bit dirty, not a bit, you know. So we need more people who carry light, more people who have the right value systems, more people who care enough to make a difference and not just going there to make money or to be corrupt. And things are changing. Like you said, people are improving. We've had 2 politicians so far. The ones we spoke to are very passionate. And they said there are also people there who are also trying to, so people now know that if you don't work, your people are most likely not going to vote for you. And it's getting harder and harder to rig elections, and people want that legitimacy. So we're making progress. It might be slow, but at least we're making progress, and we'll make more progress if more people get involved. So this is your call to action to get involved. So thank you so much for watching. Follow, share, and amplify the conversation. Take care, everyone. That stuff. So at the end of the day, they say those who fail to plan to fail. Build the conceptual ideas and not able to build the concept. Conversations with Chinenye.